They say families are built on trust, but mine was shattered by the one man I thought would never betray us. I'll never forget the night it started. I was 17, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, halfway through decorating a handmade scrapbook for my mom's birthday. It was supposed to be a surprise. A tribute to all the memories we've made as a family, vacations, birthdays, lazy Sundays. I was gluing a photo of us at the Grand Canyon when I heard the front door creak open. Dad was home late again. Mom looked up from the couch, trying to hide the worry behind her smile. "Hey, honey," she said gently as he walked in. He grunted something that barely resembled a greeting, kissed the top of her head absently, and headed straight to the kitchen. That was the moment I noticed it, the smell of expensive perfume. Not Mom's. Not even close. I didn't say anything then. I should have. But I didn't want to believe that something could be wrong. I chalked it up to work stress. My dad, Mark, was a respected architect in town. Long hours. Big deadlines. Fancy clients. Maybe it was just one of them. But the late nights became frequent. His phone, once left casually on the dining table, never left his side. He was jumpy, overly defensive when questioned, and weirdly protective about even the smallest things. One evening, I overheard a heated conversation in the kitchen. "Stop calling me here," he whispered furiously. "You know it's risky." Mom didn't hear it. She was upstairs folding laundry. But I did. I froze, my heart hammering. I pressed closer to the wall, careful not to make a sound. There was silence. Then the sound of a message being sent. Then, a sigh. Heavy. Tired. Guilt-ridden. That night, I couldn't sleep. A week later, everything unraveled in the worst way possible. It was my mom's birthday. I'd spent the whole day preparing. She didn't know it, but I'd invited a few close friends over for dinner, including her best friend, Jenna, and Jenna's 21-year-old daughter, Chloe. They were practically family. Chloe used to babysit me growing up, though she barely acknowledged me these days. Still, Mom adored them both, and I wanted her day to be perfect. By 7 p.m., everyone was gathered around the table. Laughter echoed off the walls. Wine glasses clinked. My mom looked radiant, her cheeks pink from the glow of candlelight and joy. Then Dad stood up to make a toast. I didn't expect anything dramatic, just some words about love, aging gracefully, all that usual stuff. But what came next? It was like something out of a nightmare. He cleared his throat, tapping his glass gently. "I need to say something," he began. Something I'd been holding back for a long time. A weird tension filled the room. Jenna leaned forward, brows furrowed. Chloe stared down at her plate. Mom just smiled expectantly, waiting. "I'm sorry," Dad continued. "But I can't live a lie anymore. I've fallen in love with someone else. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did." The silence was deafening. I felt the blood drain from my face. Everyone froze. And then he said it. "It's Chloe." Mom blinked. "Chloe who?" Dad looked at her. "Chloe. Jenna's daughter." At first, I thought it was some cruel joke. That someone would burst out laughing and say, "Gotcha." But no one did. Mom's face crumbled. Jenna stood up so fast her chair fell over. "Chloe." Chloe just stared at the table, her lip trembling. "You're joking," Mom whispered, her voice barely audible. Dad shook his head. "I wish I was." The sound my mother made, I'll never forget it. A gasp, a choke, a sob all at once. She stood up and slapped him. Hard. The whole room erupted. Jenna was screaming. Chloe was crying. My heart was thundering, but my feet wouldn't move. I was paralyzed. He left with Chloe that night. And just like that, my family shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. There's a certain silence that falls over a house when it's just been broken. Not the peaceful kind. Not the comforting, curled up in bed kind. This was the kind of silence that howled through the halls like a ghost, rattling windows and echoing in your bones. And that's what our house felt like after that night, a ghost of what it used to be. Mom didn't cry at first. Not in front of anyone. Not even me. She just stood there, blank, like her soul had left her body while the rest of us sat in disbelief. Jenna had grabbed Chloe and stormed out without a word. The guests filtered out awkwardly, whispering apologies and dragging coats behind them. No one knew what to say. What could you say to the woman whose husband just declared his love for her best friend's daughter? That night, I found Mom sitting on the floor of her closet, still in her birthday dress, mascara smeared, holding the scrapbook I made her. Pages crumpled in her hands. She wasn't sobbing. Just staring. Like she was waiting to wake up. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, sitting beside her. I had no idea. She didn't respond for a long time. Then she said something I'll never forget. I knew something was wrong. I just never thought he'd be that cruel. I hugged her. She didn't hug back. But I felt her body shudder. A quiet, contained kind of grief that made my chest ache. That was the moment I realized something inside her had shattered, and it might never go back to the way it was. In the days that followed, everything changed. Dad didn't come back home. He sent a text. "I'm staying at a hotel. I need time to figure things out." That was it. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement of the wreckage he'd left behind. Coward. Chloe tried texting me too. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. We didn't plan this. I didn't respond. Because what do you say to someone who took everything from you and called it an accident? Meanwhile, Mom stopped eating. She barely spoke. She moved like a ghost through the house, surviving on coffee and muscle memory. I started making dinner each night, even if she didn't touch it. I left notes on the fridge, eat something. I love you. You're not alone. School became my escape, ironically. I dreaded senior year, but now it was a sanctuary from the hurricane at home. Of course, the rumor spread fast. Small towns are poison that way. People whispered behind my back, stared at me in the halls. Chloe, apparently, had dropped out. Or maybe her mom moved her to another state. I didn't know. I didn't care. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the party, Dad showed up. I was the only one home. I opened the door and froze. He looked awful. Bags under his eyes, hair messy, jacket half-zipped like he'd rushed out of somewhere. His face lit up like he thought I might smile. Hey, he said. I didn't move. Can I come in? I didn't want to let him in. But something in me wanted answers. So I stepped aside. He walked in like a stranger. The house didn't even feel like his anymore. He looked around, as if expecting things to look different. They didn't. We were different. He sat at the table. I stood. Where's your mom? Out. Doesn't matter, I said. Say what you came to say. He sighed, running a hand over his face. I messed up. I laughed, loud and bitter. You think? I didn't mean to fall in love with her, he said. It just happened. Chloe made me feel alive again. My fists clenched. And Mom? She made you dead? He looked wounded. Good. Your mother and I hadn't connected in years, he said. We were just going through the motions. So cheat. With her best friend's daughter? You don't just throw away 20 years because you want to feel young again, Dad. You don't understand. No. You don't understand what you've done. He went quiet. Then he said something that made me want to scream. I think I want to make it work. With Chloe. The world tilted. You think this is love? I hissed. You blew up your family for an infatuation with a girl barely older than your daughter. His face hardened. I didn't come here to fight. No. You came here to justify the unjustifiable. Get out. He stood slowly. Just tell your mom I stopped by. I didn't respond. I waited until the door closed before I collapsed onto the couch, shaking with rage and sadness. That night, I told Mom he came. She didn't react. Just stared out the window. He said he wants to make it work. With her. She finally turned to me, eyes glassy. Then let them drown in it. And just like that, something changed in her. Not healed. But hardened. And we both knew, this war was just beginning. The fallout didn't stop at our doorstep. It spread like wildfire, family, friends, neighbors, even people I barely knew. The whispers were constant. Some took Dad's side, midlife crisis, they said. He deserves to be happy. Others offered pitiful condolences to Mom at the grocery store like someone had died. And in a way, something had died. Trust. Stability. Us. But what made it worse was when people started choosing Chloe's side. She's not a bad person, a mutual friend said one afternoon. She didn't steal your dad. Maybe your parents weren't happy to begin with. I stared at her in disbelief, my chest tightening. You think that justifies sleeping with someone else's husband? I'm just saying, maybe it was already broken. I walked away. Because nothing in the world could justify the betrayal we'd been handed. Not boredom. Not distance. And certainly not some 20-year-old girl who used to come to our house and call my mom auntie. The real twist? Chloe tried to make contact. She messaged, on a burner Instagram account. You don't have to hate me forever. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't respond, but I screenshotted it. I needed to keep a record of her not meaning to destroy a family. Then came the family dinner. My grandma, Dad's mom, invited us all. Me, Mom, and him. She didn't mention Chloe, but I knew she'd come. I begged Mom not to go. But she said something I didn't expect. I want them to see I survived. We arrived dressed in black like we were attending a funeral. Mom looked stunning, composed, powerful, eyes lined sharp like she'd painted on armor. I stayed close to her side. Dad was already there. And of course, Chloe stood next to him. She wore a soft pink dress. Innocent. Delicate. Like she hadn't torn the skin off our lives with her bare hands. People greeted her awkwardly, as if trying to pretend this was all normal. As if new girlfriend and daughter's friend weren't in direct conflict. Grandma came over, hugging Mom tight. She whispered something I couldn't hear. Mom nodded once, stiffly. When she turned to Chloe, though, she didn't smile. You look well, Grandma said to Chloe. Thank you, Chloe replied sweetly. Then, to Mom, I hope you know I didn't do this to hurt you. Mom didn't blink. But you did hurt me. Whether you meant to or not. Chloe's smile faltered. The meal was unbearable. I didn't touch my food. Dad tried to make small talk like this was a regular Sunday. I stared at him like he was a stranger who'd broken into my life wearing my father's face. Then Chloe made the mistake of speaking to me. I miss hanging out, she said quietly. My hands clenched under the table. I turned to her. I used to tell you everything, I said coldly. Even about the things I loved about my dad. And now I wonder, were you always listening like a thief outside a window, planning what to take? The table went silent. Dad cleared his throat. That's enough. No, I said sharply. It's not nearly enough. Mom placed a calming hand on my arm. But I wasn't done. You didn't just break a marriage, I told Chloe. You broke me. You broke my image of family. Of love. Of loyalty. And for what? Some twisted fantasy about playing house with my father? Chloe's eyes welled up. She pushed her chair back and fled to the bathroom. Dad stood, but Grandma raised her hand. Let her be. When dinner ended, people left quickly, murmuring things they thought were comforting. They weren't. Nothing was. That night, I sat with Mom on the porch. You were incredible, I told her. She smiled faintly. I didn't feel incredible. I felt like screaming. Same. She exhaled slowly. You know what's funny? I still remember Chloe as a little girl, running around in our backyard. I braided her hair once before a school recital. I nodded. I remember that. You made her hot chocolate. I loved her, she whispered. Like a daughter. Silence sat with us. She betrayed more than a marriage, Mom continued. She betrayed years of love. Years of kindness. And now, she expects forgiveness like it's a gift she's entitled to. I reached over, squeezing her hand. She doesn't get that gift, I said. Neither does he. That night, I went to bed with a single thought echoing in my mind. If they expected time to make this easier, they were about to be very disappointed. Because this wasn't over. They thought I'd burn out. That I'd simmer down. That one day, I'd look at them and feel nothing. But silence isn't forgiveness. And distance doesn't mean peace. I wasn't healing quietly, I was rebuilding a fortress from the ashes they left me in. It had been months since that dinner. Since I saw them sitting at the table like they'd earned their seats, like they weren't holding forks over the corpse of my family. But something shifted inside me after that night. I stopped waiting for closure. I stopped wondering when my dad would wake up and realize he'd traded a legacy for a lie. I stopped hoping Chloe would crumble under the weight of her choices. They weren't going to break. So I had to. Break away. I started therapy. Not the kind where you nod and say I'm fine. The ugly kind. The raw kind. Where I sat in a quiet room, week after week, peeling back the layers of hurt. Where I admitted that it wasn't just betrayal, it was abandonment. Rejection. A loss of innocence so sharp, I still had mental splinters. And every time I thought I was done crying, another wave came. Not because I missed them. But because I missed who I was before they broke me. I missed being a daughter. But over time, the anger started to change. It didn't disappear, it matured. It stopped being a wildfire and became something sharper, colder. Like ice. Controlled. Contained. I wasn't lashing out anymore. I was watching. One day, I found out Chloe had dropped out of college. Rumor was she and Dad were taking time to travel. A sabbatical from reality. A road trip through a relationship built on ruin. She posted pictures of them smiling in Greece, holding hands in Italy, kissing in front of sunsets they didn't deserve. But pictures don't tell the full story. I knew that now. And then, my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail. From Dad. I know I hurt you. But I'm still your father. I miss you. I miss us. I'm sorry. 10 seconds. That was all he gave me after tearing my mother apart and ghosting his own child. 10 seconds to rewrite history with a trembling voice and coward's tone. I didn't call back. But I listened to it again. And again. Until the sadness turned into something darker. Clarity. I finally understood, he wasn't reaching out because he wanted to make it right. He was reaching out because the fantasy was failing. Their love story wasn't sustainable. Chloe was younger, yes, but immaturity doesn't age well. Infidelity doesn't become fidelity. And guilt has a way of cracking even the most beautiful veneers. Mom was thriving by now. She'd gone back to school, something she'd always wanted. She dyed her hair chestnut red and started volunteering at a women's shelter. She hosted wine nights with friends, laughed harder, lived bolder. She never dated again. Not yet. She was busy falling back in love with herself. One afternoon, I joined her at the shelter. A woman there looked just like Chloe. Same soft voice. Same big eyes. But this woman was different. She looked worn down. Not by cruelty, but by regret. Later, I asked her what had brought her in. She smiled softly and said, I stayed with a man who left destruction behind him like footprints. And I kept pretending we were building something. That hit me like a truck. Because for the first time, I saw Chloe not just as a villain, but as a girl chasing validation with her eyes closed and hands open. But knowing that didn't make me forgive her. It just made me let go. You see, I realized something important. When someone you love becomes the villain in your story, you don't wait for them to fix it. You write them out. A year passed. On the anniversary of the day everything fell apart, I visited my favorite lake. I took a notebook. I wrote their names at the top of the page. And then, I wrote everything they took from me. My childhood. My image of love. My trust in family. Then I flipped the page and wrote everything I found without them. My voice. My strength. My future. I tore the pages out. Burned them on a tiny matchbook grill by the shore. The paper curled and hissed. The ink melted into ash. And I didn't cry. Because they didn't get my tears anymore. A few months later, I saw Chloe again. Grocery store. No makeup. Hair in a messy bun. She looked ordinary. Human. Faded. She saw me. Froze. Then smiled. A soft, sad smile. Hey, she said. I nodded. Are you okay? She asked. I paused. Then smiled back. I'm incredible. And I was. Because I wasn't the girl crying in the hallway anymore. I wasn't the daughter begging for attention, the friend watching her family be gutted by betrayal. I was someone new. Someone whole. And as I walked away, I didn't look back. Because the past is not my home. And they? They were just the fire that forged me.